Hello class and welcome to today's lesson on adding and subtracting unlike fractions, which is section 3.6. This relates to yesterday's lesson where we added and subtracted like fractions. In order to do this, just like yesterday, we need a common denominator. So we are looking at 7 and 21, and we're going to see our common denominator is going to be 21. So we're going to multiply both the top and the bottom by 3. Giving us 15 over 21 for the first fraction, plus 9 over 21 for the second fraction. Then now that we have our common denominator, we're going to go ahead and add the numerators, giving us 24 over 21. Looking at 24 and 21, I can divide both of those by 3. So I'm going to go ahead and reduce that to 8 over 7. And then simplifying to my mixed number, I'm going to end up with 1 and 1/7. So we have that chance to reduce before, right here where I reduced with dividing by 3, or you could have turned it into 1 and 3/21, which would then get reduced to 1 and 1/7. Next example we're looking at, -1 and 5/9 plus 7 and 11/12. Again, we need a common denominator. Just like yesterday, we want to try and find the smallest number that we can use for our denominator to help us eliminate the reducing. So looking at the multiples of 9, we have 9, 18, 27, 36. When we get up to 36, 12 can also divide 36, so our common denominator is going to be 36. So I'm going to start by multiplying the first fraction by 4, and I'm going to multiply that second fraction by 3 to get my common denominator. So we have our -1 plus 7 for the whole numbers, giving us a positive 6. Then we have our second part, so we've got 20 over 36. Since that was part of a negative number, that is a negative fraction. And then we have adding on 33 over 36 after our multiplication. So now we're going to go ahead with our common denominators, bring that over, and add up those numerators. -20 plus 33 is going to give me an answer of 13. So then we are going to combine our whole number and our fraction back together. 6 plus 13, 36. Gives us our final answer. Next case with addition, we are going to go ahead and again try and find our common denominator. Looking between 6 and 7, the first common denominator that they have is 42. So I'm going to multiply my first fraction by 7 and my second fraction by 6, giving me for whole numbers, I'm going to have 4 plus 12. And for my fractions, I'm going to have 35 over 42 plus 12 over 42. Adding up those whole numbers, I'm going to end up with an answer of 16. And adding up my fractions, I'm going to end up with an answer of 47 over 42. Looking at 47 over 42, that is an improper fraction. So I'm going to reduce that down to 1 and 5 over 42. 42 can go into 47 once, giving us a remainder of 5. I now need to combine my whole number answer with my fraction answer. So 16 plus 1 and 5/42, giving us a final answer of 17 and 5/42. So that whole number is going to get combined with our initial whole number answer. Switching over to subtraction now. Again, we're looking for a common denominator, so looking between 9 and 6. Looking at the multiples of 9, we have 9 and then 18. That is a common denominator between 9 and 6, so we're going to multiply the first fraction by 2 and the second fraction by 3. Multiplying the first fraction by 2 gives us 14 over 18 minus, for the second fraction, 15 over 18. Going to go ahead and subtract those numerators now, giving me a -1 over 18. and there is nothing else I can do to reduce that. Using mixed numbers now. So we're going to start by pulling out our whole numbers. So I've got 9 minus 6. Then we're going to go ahead and look at our denominators. 5 and 6, the first common denominator they have is 30. So we're going to multiply the first fraction by 5 and the second fraction by 6. So our first fraction turns into 5 over 30, and we are subtracting 24 over 30. From here, there are a couple different ways you can go about this. So your first way would be to do normal subtraction. 9 minus 6 gives us 3. 5 minus 24 gives us negative 19. So then when we combine these back together, we end up with 3 minus 19 over 30. When we put those together, we can split that 3 up into 2 and 30 over 30, giving us a whole number, or a 1, and subtract that 19 over 30 then to give me 2 and 11 thirtieths. So that is the first way for how you can deal with this situation. Your other option, when you had your initial setup, you notice that those fractions on the bottom, so our whole numbers are still 9 minus 6, the fractions on the bottom, you notice right away that your second fraction is bigger, which is going to give you a negative number. You have the chance at this point to do some borrowing. So instead of saying 9, you can take out 1 and turn it into an 8, and then we've got an extra 30 out of 30 at the bottom, which would make this first fraction 35 out of 30. So we took that 1 out, that 30 out of 30, and added it to 5 out of 30 to give us 35 out of 30. Then you would go ahead and do your subtraction from here, which is going to give you 2 for the whole number, and 35 minus 24 gives us 11 for the fraction. Combining those two back together, once again, gives you 2 and 11 out of 30. So when you are subtracting, if you're going to end up with a negative number for your fraction, you can either get the negative fraction and then deal with the borrowing at the end to reduce your answer, or your second option is to notice that you were going to get a negative answer and borrow at the front, so your fraction is positive and you can put your answers back together. Final question we have here. Notice both of them are negative now, so I've got negative 4 minus 5, and then for the fractions 13 and 2, our common denominator is going to be 26. So multiplying by those opposites, since it is a negative fraction, we now have negative 6 over 26 minus 13 over 26. When I do my subtraction, I get negative 9 and negative 19 over 26. Since those are both negatives, we're going to go ahead and just put those into one final answer of negative 9 and 19/26. If you have any questions about this lesson, I will be happy to answer those tomorrow at the beginning of class. Your assignment for tonight is page 155 and 156, problems 2 through 28 evens. You are good to get started working on your assignment.